This story was submitted by Oliver. This happened a couple of years ago when I had just turned 14. My family, along with two of my friends, were going to my uncle's beach house in Ocean City, Maryland for vacation. The first half of the week we were there was fairly normal, just walking around, eating expensive nasty food, doing beach things. But my encounter takes place midway through the week, late at night. My friends and I were sitting on our porch talking until about 1 a.m., which is when they both became tired enough to go inside to sleep. I've had problems sleeping for a while now, so I laid on the couch, my bed, for the next hour or two, listening to music and trying to sleep. I pulled my earbuds out and checked my phone, only to see that it was 3 a.m. I finally started to fall asleep, but right as I rolled onto my other side, I immediately froze in shock. There was a random person standing outside the window next to the couch I was sleeping on. I'll need to describe the layout real quick to explain this easier. My brother and I were both sleeping on the first floor, in the TV room, which is a perfect square. On the right side of the room, right side of the house also, there is a sliding glass door and the main door, both next to each other. And in the front of the room, there is another sliding door. And for some reason, I decided to sleep on the couch right next to the sliding door and the main door. Also, with me being on the right side, my brother was sleeping on the couch on my left side, about 10 feet away, with my friends being in the room right next to him. Now that we have all that out of the way, I'll continue. I opened my eyes to see a man on the other side of the glass door, not moving at all, just standing there. He stood there for maybe 30 minutes, and then he moved to the door in the front of the house. He tried opening it, but it was locked. And again, he just stood there for about another 30 minutes. I'm not entirely sure why, but this sent chills through me. Something didn't seem right about this at all. I could have passed it off as him being on drugs or drinking, which could have been possible. But he wasn't moving at all, and he was standing too stable for possibly being under the influence. It felt like forever with him standing there, but I know he was only staring at the door for about 30 minutes because I kept checking the time on my phone. Right around 30 minutes of standing there, he moved from the front door into the main door. He tried to open the door again, and when it wouldn't open, he stood there. At this point, adrenaline kicked in, and I reached for my pocket knife that was next to the couch. I slid it into my pocket and reached for my laptop bag, because I almost always bring more knives with me when I stay somewhere overnight. As I was trying to open my bag, I tried sizing him up as much as I could, and looked for any features that were visible. All I really got was, he was about 6'2", maybe 6'3", had broad shoulders, and was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up. After a minute or two of looking through my bag, I had found my two fixed blades, a butterfly knife and another folding knife. I wasn't sure what else to do now other than wait. I couldn't wake my brother without making a lot of noise, due to him still recovering from a surgery a few months before, and I didn't want to call the police, because I felt like this person would hear me inside the house, and I also wasn't a big fan of police officers at the time. That's now changed. I tried making my way into my friend's room without making any loud noises, and told them both that someone was trying to get inside the house. They just rolled over, grabbed their pocket knives, and fell back asleep. Since I was alone on this, I walked back into the TV room, only to find that the man wasn't there anymore. I waited for maybe 15 minutes, and then heard shoes walking on the wooden boards of the porch. He was back. He came up the stairs and to the main door. I couldn't believe it. He was doing the same thing over again. He tried the door, then waited, moved to another door, and waited after trying to open that one. He did this a few more times, before leaving again. When he left for the second time, it was maybe 4:30 a.m., almost 5. I passed the time by texting my girlfriend, explaining what was going on, instead of calling the police for some reason. I know, dumb idea. After another 15 through 20-ish minutes passed, here he was again, repeating the same process over again. He made his rounds to each door, and waited at each door too. I wasn't sure what was going on, but for some reason, each time he stood at the door, looking in, I felt like he was staring directly at me. I felt a wave of dread come over me, and I felt threatened. I didn't know what he wanted to do, but I knew if he came inside, I would strike. He finally made his way back to the main door, tried to open it, but failed again, then waited. After 10 to 15 minutes of him standing there, I had had enough. I got up and started walking to the door in the front of the house. I was going to try to talk to him and see what he wanted. I reached for the handle, but before I could even make a sound or open the door, he turned around and walked away. I'm guessing he kept walking into the backyard, because I didn't see any shadows of him heading to the front porch, and I didn't hear him walking on the wooden path to the front. He didn't come back after that, and I finally fell asleep at around 8 in the morning. I woke up at 10 to my family making breakfast on the second floor. I went up, and after eating, told them about what had happened that night. None of them had been outside, and none of them had heard or seen anything. And I know none of them were messing with me, because this guy was much bigger than anyone at the house. Again, I don't know what his intentions were, but they did not feel good at all. And I'm still hoping to find some sort of information on this, or an encounter similar to this, because I'm really curious about what this man wanted. This story was submitted by an anonymous viewer. This story also contains animal abuse. Viewer discretion is advised. When I was 16, my family moved from Ohio to Texas, where my family of 8 moved into a double-wide trailer. The day we moved in, the landlord said, "Don't talk to the man next door who lives on the left. Don't even nod at him if you happen to be at the mailbox at the same time." My brother was 15 at the time and noticed the man next door smoking a cigarette and begged me to walk over to bum one, but I refused to do it. Roughly 2 weeks later, I gave in and agreed to go. The man was big. I'm talking 6'6" at least, and roughly 350 through 400 pounds. He gave us each a cigarette, and my brother and I started to go over there every day and get free cigarettes. After about a month, shit started to get scary. He would say things to me like, "When you turn 17, I'm going to kidnap you and take you to California where I can legally marry you, and if you tell a soul, I'll kill your family." He told my brother and I there had been an old house across the street where a family of 6 had lived, and "I caught it on fire and killed them all. That's why there is a newer house there." Well, I turned 17 a month after this and started to become very frightened. The 40-year-old man would come over to my house and bring me gifts, trying to entice me to go to his house, and I would always refuse to leave my house. One day he came over and asked me to go on a walk with him to the cemetery across the street, to which I quickly refused. But my father made me go. On the walk, he told me that he loved me, and that he'd do whatever I asked him to. He said, "Want me to put my hand in this fire ant mound? I'll do it." And he did. His hand was so swollen and disgusting afterwards. On the night before Thanksgiving in 2006, I went to the other neighbor's house where a girl my age lived. We were baking pies so our families could celebrate Thanksgiving together the next day, We did not have electricity in my house for 3 of the 4 months we lived there, when my brother comes pounding on the door, demanding a phone. I'll never forget the look on his face, a look of pure horror. He called the police and told them our dog had been killed. My dog had been tied to a fence separating the man's yard from our own. I tried to run outside, but my brother grabbed my arm and demanded I not leave the house. So I sat there in the neighbor's kitchen for at least an hour, as the police thought it was a prank. The entire time, our other dog was barking hysterically. He was a pit bull and tied maybe 20 feet from my dog who was in the side yard. When the cops did arrive, I finally went to my house. I immediately ran to the pit to comfort him and calm him. He stopped barking and sat down patiently. I walked up on my porch, and there was blood everywhere. It was all over the siding, porch, front door, and grass. It was even smeared all over the window of my parents' bedroom, which was on the porch. It appeared he had slit the dog's throat, picked her up, and violently shook the blood all over the porch and walkway. Never have I seen so much blood in my life. I saw my dog, her name was Precious, with her throat slit, laying right in front of me on our front door. My youngest brother walked outside, and we pushed him back in the house. He was only 4, but he's almost 15 now, and he sometimes brings up that dog, as her slaughtered body is embedded in his brain still, a memory none of us will likely forget. The man had earlier knocked on the door and demanded my mother tell him where I was. Thankfully, my mother absolutely refused to tell him a thing. Had she told him, I probably wouldn't be alive right now. So he took it out on the dog. I've always believed it to be a warning, as if, you're next. All the while the cops are there, an hour or so, the man has a huge bonfire in his yard, and you can hear him maliciously laughing and taunting me. He sounded as if he was possessed, and I believe he was. He even strolled over to my house and asked the cops what was going on over here. He was drunk, and the cops did nothing. He was not arrested, or even questioned that I know of, but we know it was him. The cops let us use their flashlights as we packed our book bags. We drove back to Ohio that night. He continued to call my father and ask where we went, so my father got a new phone. 2 weeks later, my dad got a call from the neighbors on the other side, saying that the man had beaten his handicapped elderly father who was in a wheelchair within an inch of his life, and fled. To this day, the cops, his family, or anyone else knows where he fled to. But I remember he once told my brother and I he dreamed of living in Michigan. I'm convinced that's where he fled to. I had nightmares for months that he would find and kill me, and would occasionally see his face in a crowd somewhere. But that is all past, and I no longer fear that he can find me. This story was submitted by Steven. Not long ago, I worked as a night cleanup guy at a small business motel. One night I got a call on my work cell from the lady at the front desk. It must have been around 11 or 12 o'clock when this call came in, and I heard a raspy man's voice telling me that he had left some of his stuff in one of the rooms that morning, and asking me to enter the room and get his things for him. I directed him to my manager, but told him he would have to reach him in the morning. The guy continuously insisted that it was important, and he needed his things tonight. "I will give you $100, he said. $100 to unlock the room and collect his gear and wait for his arrival? That made me agree. Back then, I didn't nearly make enough money to support myself, plus keep my shitty apartment. So to be honest, when money bells went off, I was bound to do most things for an extra profit. I went to the lobby and got the key from Janice at the front desk. I told her it looked like there had been glass on the floor when I walked by, so she would give me the key to clean it. I am maintenance after all. While I was there, I had double-checked to make sure that the room had not yet been given out. Without even looking at the book, she told me it was empty. Janice was never the type to lift a finger to make herself helpful. I ignored her sour attitude and started for the second-floor room. I climbed the stairs, unlocked the door, and went in. Instantly, I had noticed that the man had left the bathroom light on. I turned the bedroom light on and saw no one, but started gathering the left-behind items. One item was his wallet on the side table, but upon inspecting it, I noticed that there was no ID. Ignoring this, I took it in hand and made my way to the bathroom. The man said he had left a pair of hair clippers on the sink. He did, and the hair was everywhere. The sink was filled, and the floor was covered with hair. I honestly could not believe that someone would leave this mess for housekeeping. I put the clippers in the nearby box and latched it closed. As I did, from behind me I hear someone yell, "And who the fuck are you?" in a loud, grim voice. I jumped and turned to see a tall, dark man standing in the doorway. "Oh, I'm sorry," I replied, stammering. "I'm just maintenance. I wasn't aware that anyone was in here," I said weakly, heart still pounding from the scare. I stared at this big man intensely for what felt like ages. He said nothing, and just stared at me with hateful eyes. "I'm just here to gather a few items left by a customer. I'll get the rest and leave. I'm sorry for any inconvenience." I tried to walk past him, but he blocked the doorway. He pulled out a rather big pocket knife and flipped it open. He then put his hand on my throat and pushed me backwards. "These are my things," he said in a deep, unsettling voice, while in one thrust, bolted towards me, swinging the knife in a stabbing motion towards my stomach, but stopping right before touching me. I stood there in terror, still flinching, and he kept the knife at my gut, looked me in the eyes, moved his face closer to mine, and said, "Now get the fuck out of here." I dropped the clippers and wallet and fled as fast as I could. Tears in my eyes and still shaking, I ran back to the lobby. Janice reacted and promptly called the police. Once again, she assured me that the room was not given out, showing me the book as proof. The cops got there and barged into the room with guns drawn. The man was gone. He had left the wallet, still filled with money, and the clippers on the floor where they had landed. Everything was left untouched, except the wall, which had the words, "You're dead," deeply carved in it. I don't know why that man decided not to stab me that night. Was that intimidating note to me for calling the police, or someone else? Maybe it was meant for the man that called me to get his things from the room in the first place. Or maybe he just liked the feeling of scaring the piss out of me for the rest of my life. The unknowing is what fears me the most, but I'm happy to be alive. That was my last night at that job. I didn't want a chance of that man coming back. I truly hope I'm not the inspiration for that note. I try to forget it, but it's still in the back of my mind, while other thoughts run rampant, thinking of what would happen if I see him again. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. As a lot of you who follow me on Facebook know, I'm back from vacation, and that's why I hadn't had a video up in a while. I was going to record while I was in the hotel room, but there was a lot of little kids jumping around and making noise. Yay! So I just enjoyed the time and spent it with my family. So before I talk too much about that, let's go ahead and get to these stories. So, the first story. I can't believe you were actually going to open the door for the guy. I can understand the wanting to stay quiet and not call the police, at least until he's doing something, but you probably should have called the police. I also think that emergency services should add a way that you can text, just in case you aren't able to talk. I'm glad the guy eventually disappeared, and thankfully he walked away before you opened the door, because you don't know what he had behind his back. Now for the second story. I'm really sorry to hear about your dog. That is truly a horrible way to go. It's unfortunate this psycho is still out there. Hopefully he got caught doing something else by now, and hopefully he never finds you again. I doubt he'll even come looking, as he's probably got other people closer that he could hurt if he wanted to, as in the old man in a wheelchair. Now for the third story. I can understand you wanted to make a little extra money, but it is a little odd that someone wanted to pay you $100 to go into the room and grab their items, when they could most likely just come in and do it themselves, or talk to management and have it done the next day. Even so, I wonder how there was someone in there if the room wasn't rented out, and how he knew exactly where everything would be. It sounds like it would have been a setup to kill you, but he had his opportunity, and he didn't take it. So that kind of makes you wonder, what were his true intentions? Thankfully you never had to find out, and you got out of there safely. And I don't blame you for not staying at that job. I've heard hotels have a lot of crazy stuff go on. I hope you all have an awesome day. If you'd like to follow me on Facebook and Twitter, I'll have a link in the description on how to do so. I'd like to give a big thank you to everyone submitting their stories. And if you would like a chance to have your story featured, make sure you check the description on information on how to submit your stories. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and just remember, it's always scarier
if it's true.